program, and I am a health education specialist with the California Rural Indian Health Board. If you're Acorn's subcontractor, then you've known me from that grant. I'm also along with Melissa, one of the representatives for California for the National Native Network. So let's get started. So today we're gonna have a commercial tobacco cessation training. This training is geared more as a review for working professionals. I do have some like Ask, Advise, Refer or introductory level trainings, and then I have a full-blown CEU certified course that takes a couple of days that I offer. So this is kind of the in-between level presentation for today. So I just kind of wanted to keep that in mind while we go through the rest of today's presentation. So if you have any questions during the PowerPoint version, just go ahead and type them in the chat and Melissa will relay those to me. And then we're gonna practice today. So while we're practicing, if you wanna unmute your mic, I'll forewarn you guys now that I'll be calling on people for opinions and examples and stuff. So during that session, feel free to unmute yourself and just chime in. So before we get started, I did want to go over the difference between cultural and commercial tobacco. In this presentation, we're focusing on commercial tobacco cessation, and in many American Indian, Alaska Native communities, tobacco is considered sacred, and it could be considered a gift from the Creator. One of the key differences is that it's not genetically engineered to produce more yield or more nicotine or a different flavor. It's used for ceremonial purposes. One example is it can be inhaled or not inhaled and then blown out into the air to carry the prayers up to the Creator. It could be used medicinally as a painkiller or offered as a sign of respect to a healer or elder. For example, sometimes we will offer, well, not we, but some people will offer tobacco as a thank you if they do an opening prayer, for example. So I want to share a video with everyone that will kind of explain this a little bit more. And I think it's really important to cover this because in our target population, we are serving American Indian, Alaska Native communities. And so if you're going to help them develop a quit plan, I think it's important to note the differences between the two. So this video that I'm about to share with you guys is coming out of the Arizona area. So it's a little bit different than the California population or the uses in California, but I think some of the key takeaways are the same. I'm going to go ahead and get that started now.
Deriving from the Navajo traditional oral stories handed down from generation to generation. Recently, smoke-free policies to prohibit commercial tobacco secondhand smoke in public places have been proposed within the Navajo Nation. Researchers from the Networks Among Tribal Organizations for Clean Air Policy Project wanted to explore and understand the history, role, and influences of commercial tobacco and secondhand smoke within the Navajo culture, specifically within the Navajo ceremonial settings.
Commercial tobacco is processed, and zleto is natural. It's organic. No additives, no chemical.
The traditional tobacco, Navajo tobacco, is used in terms of different conditions, different syndromes that people, so it's considered a medicine. It's a medicine that's used to help in healing, help in restoration, and help in giving back to the natural environment. Commercial tobacco, I think, is more geared for profit, is geared toward the continued use, support of economy that is new in terms of introduction and monetary system that we're a part of today. And that is what I think is the main difference between the two.
Die kujibala kanda minat oshi ya tashi nansa at ende jokonde. Aji atolle tabiigi atsisto bayat egi and sekesto bayat egi inda atsisto inda ya khatil khashinet la asat ashi bigi alya nana kujit neje dot eda ba'lashi bigi inte akunde ya ajgo chon ihoko jwe ya spanat så det har gått det chon det har gått eko och överlåt och betasho då slash chon ida så det har ju att has agina att ansäkes macht das a khashi macht das så det har gått det det ja chon quality så snart olje en hijo ekote.
When a person really wants to restore their balance in themselves, either spiritually, perhaps a person has not said any prayers for quite a while, or has not communicated with the Great Spirit and forgot the ways, the traditional ways, and they want to restore that spiritually. And also they use it to restore their emotional state of mind. Their physical body. Perhaps there might be some illness that they're concerned about.
Die kujibel ganam nat oi ane do e khula khada shi de khada shi khullo do khada shi e khut e hol ane ate do e helt e da ho
o vel ate gi generated hadinate de ya e do e hat ida bel Australia da die commercial tobacco and joy kat manufactured and nagia around the chemistry the mixture of the chemistry during the manufacturing versus the pure tobacco question it the klajige ya chemistry it's a habit becomes a habit forming what the heck, Craig?
No, commercial tobacco. It often that a young ajma. Do it other in the meso de zunda. Bensake, zishe bensake so kunde. Oyo abetragi da bensake is la unhalle. Do it zunchon either. It abolni do. On the Regos' team in Stockholm. Ik had daardoor
And I believe that the difference in this is that our Zisnato mountain smoke is organic. It comes from nature. There is no mixture of any kind of chemicals or pesticides or whatever other they use to grow these other commercial tobaccos that comes from the western side. So I think that ours is natural. That's the difference.
All right, so that was from the Black Hills Center for American Indian Health. This is on YouTube. It's public. Oops, I'm sorry. It's public information, but I did get permission from a gentleman named Herschel Clark, who kind of created the video, and then he did it with permission from the people that were on here sharing their wisdom. So we can keep that in mind when creating our our quit plans for the rest of the presentation. So I just want to share my screen again. All right, can you guys see the PowerPoint now? Okay, I see some head nods. So we just learned a little bit about cultural tobacco. So we'll be focusing on the cessation of commercial tobacco. That is the evil big tobacco companies that we know well. So commercial tobacco contains a deadly mix of 7,000 chemicals, hundreds of which are harmful, and about 70 of which directly cause cancer, and they are known carcinogens. So screening methods. So there's ask, advise, refer, as I kind of alluded to earlier. That is a quick method that you don't actually have to do any counseling yourself, but it does encourage a quit attempt, and you can refer someone to maybe like the California Smokers Helpline, the Native American text line, or to internally to someone that does do the cessation. And then today what we'll be focusing is on the 5 A's, specifically the assessing and assisting portion, which is the heavier portions of this kind of training. This is a comprehensive cessation method, and whichever one works best for your organization kind of depends on you. If you guys are set up to do the counseling, then you can do it yourself. And if you're just starting out or collaborating with different departments to refer them internally to you, then the Ask Advise Refer would work better for them. So this is the 5 A's, ask, advise, assess, assist, and arrange. As I mentioned, we're gonna focus primarily on the assessing and assisting portions for today, which is why it's a mini tobacco training as opposed to a full 8-hour thorough certification training. So we're gonna assess the person's own motivation to quit. So where are they in the stage of change? And if they're really unwilling to quit, then I'll kind of go over what we can do to get them over to the next stage. And then assisting them, that's really creating the work plan or the quit plan, and gauging how the addiction is present in their relationship with tobacco, and then arranging for follow-up, whether that's with you or with somebody else. This is just a flow chart of, for those visual learners like myself, this is a flow chart of what it kind of looks like. And so you would ask and screen every patient every time, advise them to quit, assess their willingness to quit, assist them with creating a quit plan, and then arrange for follow-up. And the reason I like this is because it shows relapse. So if there's relapse, you're like, oh, what do you do? Well, then you just kind of start back over, advise them to quit again and start all over. This might look a little bit confusing, but we'll go over each stage. So again, this is our stages of change model, also known as the trans-theoretical model for change, for behavior change. And that's what our goal really is in cessation, right? We're not gonna make anyone do anything. We are just going to motivate them to want to quit themselves, whether this is like a loved one, a patient, or anyone that you really know. So let's go over the different stages of change. So there's pre-contemplation, contemplation, determination, action, maintenance, and reoccurrence. And for our situation, we'll use relapse as number 6. There's a bunch of different charts or graphics for this model. I think most academic research sources will call it the trans-theoretical model. So pre-contemplation, what does that look like? So that's with a person that's not thinking about quitting at all. And so someone that's in pre-contemplation might sound like, hey, I don't want to quit, like quit pressing me on it. I'm not interested. I want to smoke, it's my choice. So what do you do with that particular person? Even if you're doing like an ask, advise, refer, do you just go, all right, well, I'll leave you alone? Well, we can still get them towards the next stage, which is contemplation. And really the only thing you can do at that stage is increase awareness. So you could just put like your one-liner in there for that person that's really hesitant. You could just say, oh, I understand you're not ready to do that yet. I'm here for you if you ever decide to, but just know it's one of the best things that you can do for your health and for your family. and you can leave it at that. The next time they might come in, or you might put it in their head that you are there for them in case they do decide to quit, and then you're their resource. So contemplation. This is for someone that sees the possibility to change, but's a little bit ambivalent or uncertain or unsure of the decision, or maybe they're not even really sure how to quit and they kind of want to, or there's a roadblock or a challenge for this particular person. They kind of want to, they're on the fence, and so they're already sort of motivated to quit. And so your role here, if this is what your assessment of the person is to help them overcome that challenge. And we'll go over how to do that here in the next slide. Those are called the 5 R's. And you can also use what's called motivational interviewing. Way to remember that is oars, like a rowboat. You have oars, and really it's open-ended questions and stuff like that to get them to know that you're listening and to try to address the specific challenges that they have, and not just nagging them to do it. It's a method. So the next one is determination. This is for a person who is willing to quit, but they don't necessarily know how. And this is why they're here to see you today. And if you are the one providing the cessation counseling, then very likely they're going to be in this stage. Maybe one of their MAs, or maybe even the dentist, or a nurse, or a family member, their wife perhaps already did an Ask Advisor with them. And they've already tried 1 or 2 times, but they're like, man, this isn't working. I need help. And they show up. This is a person that is willing to quit, but needs your help to develop that quit plan. And so what you could do here is get them a quit date. So when they basically, they're committing to that change in front of you, and then help them develop the quit plan that we'll go over in our examples here in a minute. Action. This is someone that's already doing it. Maybe they have followed up with you and they had a quit plan and it didn't work, or they're slipping, or they're finding it's too difficult, or maybe they come to your office if you're a nurse practitioner or a physician or a tobacco cessation counselor. They show up and they're like, hey man, I'm just here checking in, but I think it's working fine. I'm doing great. This is my 3rd day, but it's getting really hard. Do you have any other tips? And so that's where you can help them out a little bit. But this person's already in the process of quitting. And remember, it takes 8 to 12 attempts on average before you get to a successful quit attempt. So a couple times where they slip or they relapse is considered normal. And so they might be still on the action stage, but they just need to tweak their quit plan a little bit. And then maintenance, this is a person that's already quit successfully for 6 months, and you want to keep encouraging them to do that. Relapse can happen at any stage in this cycle, and really you just kind of start them all over again, much like you would here, right? So if on any of these, if there's a relapse, you just start them again, advise them to quit, and do it all over again. Okay, so again, this is kind of a recap or a mid-stage training. So a lot of this is probably review for some of you. This is why I'm going a little bit fast, but feel free to type anything in the chat box and we'll cover it here in a little bit. I think it'll make a little bit more sense when we do the examples also. Now the 5 R's, so this is where you use your motivational interviewing skills, and where you combine this with the ORs. Really, I kind of just take the open-ended question part about that. So they are relevance, risk, reward, roadblocks, and repetition. So if they are in in contemplation, they're thinking about it, but they give you a very specific scenario where they're like, man, I want to quit, but I just can't deal with the cravings. Well, then you are now going to use relevance to help address the cravings. And maybe it might be something like mood swings, or they're really irritable and they don't like the way they treat their loved ones when they're in that irritable section, and they're like, no, I don't, that's not an option for me. And so you could introduce nicotine replacement therapy, or you could say something like, I hear that being rude to your loved ones is something that you're really concerned about, but if you can get over this stage, or you can overcome this barrier, you won't ever have to be under the control of nicotine or something in that nature, right? So risk, some people are concerned with their health, and you can just promote the risk that this is causing to their health. If they don't care about their health at all, but they've identified that they're struggling with, in their budget, then you could name a reward, which is that they'll save money if they quit smoking. I think it's something about 7,000 a year, I believe, if I remember correctly. I could be mistaken. But they will save that money over time. Roadblocks, these are cravings, time pressure, and you just use these particular 5 R's to address their issue. A common one I hear is like, man, I've tried everything, I've tried every single time, or I've tried so many times it never works. So repetition is an example of that. You tell them, well, I hear that you've told me you've tried about 6 times. I think if you knew that on average it takes 8 to 12 times, I'm proud of you for trying 6 times, but that's normal. And they might be very motivated to continue with your session and do a quit plan. Okay, so some quitting methods. So there's cold turkey. If any of you guys have ever quit smoking and you did this cold turkey, you know how hard that is. So that's just a slang or a colloquial term for quitting without any help from anyone or any medications or pharmaceutical aids. That's really tough to do. The good news is that most people that quit cold turkey successfully usually stay quit pretty much forever, because they were able to see how hard it is to do that again if they were to relapse. Gradual isn't typically recommended. So gradual has 2 different kind of stages. So that's tapering and postponing. Tapering is sometimes recommended for those very, very heavy smoker, maybe a lot of the old guys that maybe smoke like 5 packs a day. So getting them to quit completely from 5 packs a day, so that 20 cigarettes per pack, that's a lot of cigarettes, chain smoking all day long. So that amount of nicotine in their blood going down to 0 is going to be really tough. So maybe that person might want to taper down to 1 pack a day and then come up with a quit date, and then you'd hit them with really hard NRT or an example like that. Postponing is pretty much never recommended, but people will say that they're quitting using this method, like if they say, I don't smoke at home, I just smoke at work because the kids are at home. So that's basically postponing their tobacco use. Or if this is a pregnant mom and she's like, I quit smoking while I'm pregnant, but I'm for sure intentionally going to continue to smoke as soon as I have the kid. So that's postponing your use for a little while. It's not so much quitting, and that's not really recommended. At least I don't recommend that. Pharmaceutical aids. So this is what you can use in order to reduce the cravings enough to achieve your behavioral change. And that's really the goal here. Sometimes I get the comment, why are we giving people nicotine in order to quit nicotine? Well, we're giving it in lower doses in order to be able to successfully do a behavior change, and then you just get off the NRT because it's pretty low dose. Okay, so pharmaceutical aids. Sorry, I had to clear my throat. On the left here, we have our nicotine replacement therapy, and then we have non-nicotine replacement therapy. The nicotine replacement therapy here on the left, besides the nasal spray, that's available over the counter. So we're going to use these in our examples today to go over what we can do. I'm sure maybe a lot of us aren't physicians that can prescribe, or pharmacists, or even dentists can prescribe. Our lozenge is the most self-explanatory. It's kind of hard to mess up the lozenge. You just kind of suck on it and park it on your gums, and it absorbs as it melts. The patch, there's a couple of different levels of nicotine, and so I'll go over with you guys. Our case study is going to be someone that's very dependent, and so we're going to go with the strongest version. But there's a couple of different versions. You can wear it pretty much all day long, and then you can pair that with your nicotine gum. And the nicotine gum is to be used on a scheduled basis, not an as needed basis. And the reason for that is because a cigarette will take about 8 seconds to hit your brain. And so you get that like nicotine high or that dopamine release really quickly. And so if you're having a craving and then you go, I'm going to chew this gum, the gum's not going to kick in for a couple of minutes. So in between that like really strong craving and before the NRT gum hits, you might have a slip, in which case it might not lead to a successful quit attempt. So you will want to schedule these, and I'll show you guys how to do that based on their triggers. And also this is used with the chew and park method. A lot of people will be like, hey, do you know how to use this? It's gum. And they're like, yeah, I've been chewing gum since like 2nd grade, even when I wasn't supposed to in class. But you can't just chew gum like regular. You have to use the chew and park method. So you chew, and then you kind of park it on your gums, because nicotine is absorbed through the gums, your lungs, or through your skin. It's not absorbed through your tummy. So if you just chew and kind of swallow, you're probably just gonna get a tummy ache. And if you chew enough of that gum because it's not working, so you just keep popping more in, then you'll probably throw up. And I've heard that happen too. So we have to make sure that we teach people how to do this. And you can just mention it through passing to not make people feel like they can't chew gum correctly, because that's not the case. The nasal spray and the inhaler, these are down here in the bottom left. Those are prescription only, and they're used much less often, so I'm not going to go into those in the interest of time today, but they're pretty easy to use. If you get a prescription, you do like 2 pumps in your nose. You make sure you don't blow your nose right after, so you don't blow everything out. And then the inhaler is much more of a puff inhaler than a asthma inhaler. It's not so much like an asthma inhaler. You just kind of puff it a little bit. Chantix is the brand name for varenicline, and that is, it blocks receptors in the brain and body. And so you can use it a couple different ways. One way is to just take it for like 30 days up until your quit date, so that when you hit your quit date, it's a lot easier to quit because you've already blocked all of those nicotine receptors for an entire month. And that one isn't recommended to be combined with any of the nicotine replacement therapies because it kind of defeats the purpose, because it blocks the nicotine receptors. And then Zyban is also known as Wellbutrin, I believe. They used to use this as an antidepressant, so it's still used as an antidepressant. They just named it a new thing and said it's also a cessation medication now. And you can combine these with the NRT for someone that's really strong, really highly dependent. You can send them back to their doctor to get a Zyban prescription, and then pair that with the NRT at its strongest level. So those are our pharmaceutical aids. And don't worry, I'll give you a cheat sheet right at the end of our practice session, so that if you get stuck, you can always refer to it. So I warned you guys, let's practice. Let me pull up a PDF form, and while I do that, I'm going to explain where this is coming from. So this is from the organization is called RX for Change, and you can sign up with them, and you just have to sign their, I believe it's called the end user agreement. And that basically just says that you will use their materials, but not for financial gain. That you won't distribute it like freely, stuff like that. So today, no one's paying for this training, so I'm not making money off of it, and I'm not distributing them freely. So we can use these, and you can use it too. If you're like a nonprofit and you're just trying to like use it for educational purposes, then you just sign up, sign the end user agreement, and use it. But if you're specifically billing for something, then maybe you just download it, get some training, and then you might have to make your own with permission from somewhere. But there's a lot of these plans out there for free where you don't have to sign anything. I just use this one because this is the curriculum that they use for a lot of pharmacy schools in the UC system. So this organization basically made the UC systems like pharmacy tobacco cessation curriculum, and this is what they use at the university, if I'm not mistaken. So this is known as a tobacco use log, and if they are coming to you so now we're the counselors, right? We are the cessation counselors. We're the subject matter experts, and we need to know this stuff. So if they're coming to us, this is what we need to know, and they might show up with something that looks like this. This is a tobacco use log. Maybe they went through an Ask, Advise, Refer through like the nurse, And then the nurse went to the doctor. The doctor said, I'll write a prescription for Chantix if you decide to use it. Now go to our health specialist at our public health department, and they're going to do a quit plan with you. So they might show up 2 weeks from now with this thing completely filled out. They might show up without it, but if they do, this is a log that says the time. So maybe like 8 a.m., 10 a.m., all the way down to whatever they use, describing the activity. And then for us, really importantly, is the need rating. So if they really needed these cigarettes, these are the ones that we're going to use to try to identify a trigger and to try to schedule our NRT. And the ones that are over here at a 1, this is mostly habit. So we're going to focus on behavioral change during this time where they're smoking or vaping or chewing or whatever tobacco it is that they're using, except for the cultural purposes, where we're just going to be like, hey, maybe you should stop doing that. Do something else instead. And of course, we're about to fill out a very detailed, specific way to do that. Oops. All right. Okay, so this here is known as your, can you guys see this? I zoomed in pretty far. Okay, I see some yeses. This is known as your Fagerstrom test for nicotine dependence. This particular one is adapted from the original one. This one's from the American Academy of Family Physicians. There's a bunch of different adaptations out there. I'm pretty sure this one's available for free. They have the, there's like Freedom from Smoking that offers one. The California Smokers Helpline, I'm sure, offers one also. So this one comes from the American Academy of Family Physicians. It's a little bit shorter than the original one, and I like it that they listed out the scoring system directly on here. So if you forget what is like, especially when they're like moderately dependent and highly dependent, sometimes you forget, oh man, it was a 7 or an 8, darn it. So this one has the scale on here. 7 to 10 points is highly dependent, 4 to 6 points is moderately dependent, and less than 4 points is minimally dependent. This is really important for us, the cessation counselors, to gauge what kind of pharmaceutical aid we're going to advise. If we don't prescribe anything, then we don't prescribe it because we're not licensed for that. But we can advise it, and they can just go on down to Rite Aid or Walgreens. I don't work for Rite Aid or Walgreens. That's just 2 random pharmacies. And buy it, so they can just buy it themselves. Or tip, if you guys didn't know, if you call the California Smokers Helpline right now, they are funded to provide free NRT for anyone that calls. So they can do this with you and then just follow up and call the Smokers Helpline and say, hey, can I have some free NRT? I already have this quit plan. And they'll be like, sure. And they'll send it to you for free. So again, this is the Fagerstrom test for nicotine dependence from the American Academy of Family Physicians. This here is another Fagerstrom test for nicotine dependence. This one's a little bit longer. It's the longer version, the one we're going to use right now, and it's from the RX for Change. So let's do this here. This person, guy, girl, whoever it is that shows up, let's say he's or she is highly dependent. Let's give them a highly dependent score. So how soon after you wake up do you first smoke your cigarette? So within 5 minutes, they're scoring a 3. So let's give this guy a 3. And then, so you just go straight up, go down the list and ask them all of these questions. Do you find it difficult to refrain from smoking in the place where it's forbidden, like church, library, or cinema? Yes. This person has 4 so far. Which cigarette would you have most, or would you hate most to give up? I'm reading these directly off, but when you do it yourself, you kind of know the questions to ask, and it's better to develop your own flavor or your own version of it. So first thing in the morning, this person has 5. They answered yes to number 2. Number 4, how many cigarettes per day do you smoke? Let's get this guy a little bit over a pack, so 21 to 30. So he scored a 2. So he has 7 so far. Do you smoke more frequently during the first hour after waking up than during the rest of the day? We'll say yes. This person scored an 8. So you already know, based on this, you're probably going to have to prescribe some NRT, but you're going to hold that in for a little while until you do their quit plan. But now you know going into it. Okay, so do you smoke if you are so ill that you're in bed most all day? No. So that's where this person draws the line. They go, I smoke all the time, but if I think I have COVID, probably not going to keep smoking. That's just a zinger. I'm putting COVID in there because I'm going to plug it all day long. Get ready for it, everyone. Okay, I got everyone's attention. I don't know if I've lost you guys yet. So a lot of you guys have your screens without showing faces. I'm going to warn you right now. I'm going to start calling on people that don't have their video on for our quit plan. So this here is a quit plan. RX for Change uses these two versions. They have page 1 of 2 and then page 2 of 2. Together, both of them, I feel like is a quit plan. They call one of them planning for change, thinking about quitting, and the other one is, they title it something else. Basically, both of them together are a quit plan. There's a bunch of different variations of a quit plan. I have one that's native specific when I do the large certification training. There's some that is focused specifically for like a healthcare setting, and then there's some for like community, and they're just a little bit different. A lot of the times it's just a different visual effect with the same exact questions, but we're going to use this one today. And also I noticed a lot of people turned on their videos, so good job everybody. I hope I have all your attentions. So if you forget, you can always ask directly the question that's written on here word for word. A lot of the times your first time around you will, and you'll do it 3 or 4 times, and then you'll stop looking at the questions altogether and you just have a conversation and kind of jot some stuff down. So today we're going to go as if this was kind of our first time, and I'm just going to walk through here with people chiming in all the different portions. So we're going to try to find out why people still smoke. Like, why are you still smoking if you've quit a couple of times? If you've never quit at all, we're going to find out the reason. And so you can just ask them to fill this out, or because right now we're doing stuff virtually. That's why I set this up in PDF. Usually I'd be sitting next to someone writing this down with them. But they'll be asking, or they'll be reading this, or you can just ask them, what are your top 3 reasons for continuing to smoke? Or what are your top reasons for continuing to smoke? So edit PDF. So I've put for number 1 here, stress relief. It's one I hear a lot. It says, you know, I'm really stressed out all the time, I smoke. Okay, so does anyone else want to give us a reason number 2?
Sometimes people say they don't know why they smoke, they just do it.
Okay, great. Does anyone want to give a reason number 3?
I would say relaxation, maybe.
To relax. Great. Okay. So now we know their top 3 reasons, and we're going to use these throughout our training today. So we're kind of doing one on the fly here. Why is quitting so important? So you're going to find out their top 3 reasons for wanting to quit smoking. So you can just ask them, what are your top 3 reasons to quit smoking? Or they can read this and answer. So I put the first one for you guys. Secondhand smoke to kids. So that's one I hear often. They don't necessarily really care about themselves, perhaps, but they're like, well, I don't want to expose my kids. Does anyone want to tell me a second reason that they might have heard in the past?
They can't afford it.
Just say money. Thank you. Someone want to give us reason number 3?
Health. Their health.
Health, sure.
Bad for them.
Okay. So now we know why they smoke, and now we know important reasons why they don't want to smoke anymore. So the more information we get, the better. I hope you guys can see this. Yeah, that might be better. I typically wouldn't be using like an edit PDF, but that's what we're doing today. What were the main difficulties when quitting in the past? So this might not apply. This might be their first time they ever tried quitting ever, but considering that it takes 8 to 12 times, most people report, oh, I've tried to quit before, even if it's just like a thought or an attempt for like a half a day. They'll usually tell you they've tried before. Okay, so one reason I put down is cravings. Does someone want to give us reason number 2?
Mood swings.
Mood swings, fantastic.
Ephraim, so I'm going to interrupt you really quickly because I think Steph has a question related to what you're going over right now. And she says that I find this particular test does not accurately assess dependence level due to the limited time frame of yes or no. I have a patient who assesses out as low, but her pattern is equal to a moderate or severe due to her inability to give up her smoking before bed and severe respiratory issues.
Okay, so thank you for bringing that up. So this is one tool of many that we have to really gauge their dependence. It's important to use it, but you're right, alone by itself, it's not going to tell you very much. But doing this quit plan might give you a better picture, and maybe they answer no to all of those, or maybe they answer yes to only one of them, but they're not telling you that they're chain smoking for 4 hours when they say yes. Like if they're like, which one would you rather give up? And they're like, none of them, because it doesn't apply that when they get home, they like, I don't know, have a beer and smoke for like an entire hour back to back to back, and they smoke a whole pack, right? So that's why we need to talk to them about this. And if they have an underlying condition also, then that's a big factor to consider. And then if one other way is to just ask them the amount that they smoke per day. So if they say I smoke a pack, you can kind of just gauge that. And I'll show you at the end where there's a dosing amount. And if they smoke it's kind of a cutoff level, basically like 10 and less, you get a certain dose for NRT, and then 10 and more, you get a certain dose for NRT. Does that answer the question? I don't have the chat up, so if you just want to unmute yourself, feel free.
So it answers my question in regard to going directly and only by the Fagerstrom test is maybe not, that there needs to be a secondary, because this woman, just like a morning cigarette, I gotta smoke as soon as I get up. If she doesn't smoke before bed, she's up all night. That's like her, you know, and so, and she smokes, she said she smokes less than a half a pack a day. So that would be a 0. So she's really coming up, sort of falling through the cracks, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. And on the larger CEU unit certifications, we would go into this and that type of training. But to try to kind of give a quick overview. So people have different levels of addiction and dependence. And there's a 3-link chain that we would go into. One of those things is that they basically will titrate or measure the level of nicotine that's in their blood at all times before they experience a withdrawal symptom. And if they start experiencing a withdrawal symptom, they'll even take like a bigger drag of the cigarette, hold it longer, and absorb more of the nicotine so that they get back to that level where it's like, oh, okay, all right, the withdrawal symptoms left. And a lot of those times withdrawal symptoms mimic stress or anxiety. So they'll think, man, I'm so stressed out. And they're just like smoke a bunch of cigarettes, but they're just experiencing the withdrawal symptoms. So I hope that kind of answers your question a little bit. So you're right, the Fagerstrom scale is just one tool by itself, is not going to tell you everything. Okay.
Ephraim, this is Janice. What about fear? You know,
fear
in relation to what she just said, you know, the fear of quitting, because then you'd have nothing to do. Or, you know, I mean, you'd have a different craving, but I think it would be a fear. You know?
We will address that here in the next question. So what is the worst thing that could happen if you quit smoking for good? I put here, similarly, I won't have anything left. Or some people are afraid. They won't like admit I'm scared or like I'm terrified. They might, but really they're like, I'm afraid of like what's going to happen when I'm experiencing all these withdrawal symptoms? I tried to quit for like half a day and I was going crazy and whatnot. So that's what we're trying to address that in a holistic manner, to try to address all of the different, we're trying to break it down to find out what it is they're really nervous about or what the challenge is. And when those challenges have like a counteracting activity, then maybe that fear will get down to just enough to get them to take action. Remember the stages of change. So that kind of person that has experienced fear is on the contemplation. So they're thinking about it, but they're not doing it yet because of that fear, and you want to get them to the action phase. And ideally, we can put that in here, right? So what are the main difficulties with quitting in the past? So we can put fear in here. Mood swings so far, cravings, and fear. And we'll address these, right? So this person would just be talking to us right now, and we would just be listening. Really, we're just asking the question and listening, and we're thinking about these things. The next part of the quit plan that we do is us trying to help with the things that they've told us. So right now we're listening, and then on the next one we're more like advising. So is that a good? Does that answer the question? I'll take silence as a yes. Okay, so what are the barriers to quitting right now? So my top 3 barriers to quit now are, I put money in here as an example again. So I'm going to call on someone now. Let's see, Amos Wright. Can you give us a number 2, please?
You hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, a barrier to quitting, let's see here. So that's what's preventing you from quitting smoking tobacco?
Yeah, any barrier that you've heard in the past or that you may think might be a barrier that someone would mention.
So a social norm would be one. So like the people who's around you. Like if all your friends are smoking and you decide to not smoke, they can like kind of comment on that, not in a good manner.
Yeah, that's a good one. Thank you.
Weight gain.
Weight gain? Ooh, that's another good one. I hear that one all the time. Weight gain. So let's go with gain them pounds. Oops, not puns. This is kind of small on my screen, so I'm gonna have some typos in here. Sorry, everybody.
Why would money be a barrier?
Because cessation pharmaceutical aids cost money. So if they're like, man, I need to quit smoking because I can't even afford the cigarettes anymore. One thing, I'm actually glad you brought that up, because if you, like a Chantix prescription costs money, but if they want to quit because they can't afford their addiction anymore and they would rather, I don't know, buy an extra gallon of milk for their kids, and then they're like, well, I also don't have money to spend on medications to quit. So I'm stuck in this like tough cycle where I can't afford the smoking and I can't afford the medications to quit. And so that's why I put that on here now that I remember. And what you can do for them in that scenario is kind of refer them over to the Smokers Helpline or any other organization that's currently providing free NRT. A lot of these are grant funded, so they don't lie around forever. They provide NRT for certain periods of time while funding is around. And I think like the California Smokers Helpline has like $1 million right now to provide NRT for the state to reinforce the use of NRTs. So if that was a barrier identified, you can help close or minimize that barrier by saying you can get it for free if you just call them here. And so that's one of the barriers that you would listen, right? So this person says, money, I can't afford the NRT, social norms, all my friends always want to smoke and it's hard to tell them no. And then I'm afraid to gain weight, I'm trying to go on a beach vacation and I'm concerned with my bikini bod. That might be some stuff that they're concerned with, and then we just help with those. So I kind of went a little bit further, but does that answer the question for why money is a barrier? Okay, I'm gonna take silence as a yes. Oops. I can't really see the box, so a lot of people, I can only see 1 or 2 at a time. All right, so next one, we are Melissa, how are we doing on time?
You have another hour, so we're at 2:53 right now.
Thank you. Okay, so what is the worst that could happen to you if you quit smoking for good? So here's where Janice mentioned fear. And a lot of people really will just say, you know what, I don't know. Like, I don't know. Or won't have anything left. Sometimes I hear if there was a dual dependency on something. So if they just got over opioids or methamphetamine or something like that, they're like, dude, my life has been really difficult. I just got over like opioids. My family's pushed me away from like alcoholism or something like that. Smoking is the only thing I have left. I've heard that before, and then it's kind of challenging. But we use our motivational interviewing skills, and we can say, you know what? I hear that you're concerned about not having anything left, but I think your family would be really proud of you, knowing that you've let all those addictions go. And I think that they would be willing and open to talk to you again if you really overcame all these challenges before. So that's kind of this question. You don't always have to ask these. Some of them excluded this altogether, but it's in this one, so we'll put it in. And then ideally, we want to get that quit date. So for today's purposes, we're just going to use today, 10/28/2020. And this person's going to be like gung-ho. They're ready to quit, and they're like, I'm here now. Like, they could tell you no, they're not. So this next question, if no, how might it benefit you to quit sooner? So if they're seeing you and you are the cessation counselor, you might be wondering, like, why are you even here then if you're like don't want to quit? And a lot of the time they can answer like, dude, I'm just here because my wife kept telling me like I need to quit smoking. I'm not really interested in quitting. So they're already there. You might as well try, but you can still try to motivate them to get to that other stage of change. But for today, we're going to say they're very motivated to quit. So this other question doesn't really apply. Okay. So planning for change, they call this planning for change. I feel like it's all part of the same quit plan. And this is where we identify the triggers. If we are going to offer NRT, remember that first log that they have where they identified it was a 1, a 2, or a 3. The 3 was like they really needed that one. So we're going to use that one and their other information that they've given us so far. And like Stephanie was mentioning, that one at night that the person really had to have, otherwise they're not going to sleep all night. Those are what we really want to find out here so we can prepare them for that. So one way we can do that is to do the combination NRT. So it would be like the patch, and then the gum is when they're gonna have that right before all of these triggers. So I've put some down here as an example. We can change these if you guys want. This is your time here. So trigger 1, I just put one in here as driving. So our person, remember, on the dependence scale is an 8, and they're using their motivations to quit are secondhand smoke to kid, money, and their health. So we're going to leverage those, the reasons why they're quitting. We're going to leverage those in their triggers. So if driving's one of them, you can ask them, I will change my, sorry, there's a lot of boxes up here. I will change what I do in this situation by, and I've put playing music when I drive as an example. So we're trying to change the behavior here. And then I will change how I think in this situation by, think about my reasons.
Ephraim, I think you froze, but I'm not sure if it's just on my end.
No, he's frozen.
Oh, he might have been kicked out. So I'm going to give him a minute or two and see if he can get back on. In the meantime, does anybody have any questions that they would like to type into the chat while we get Ephraim back?
I just text him.
Okay, I was about to do that. Thanks, Julie.
You know, I come from a substance abuse background. I was a substance use counselor with the county for over 10 years. And it's interesting because, you know, I'm used to dealing with the dependence criteria through the DSM, you know, where, of course, we don't even use the word dependence anymore when it comes to the new DSM-5, but there's a certain amount of criteria that you check the boxes off, and then that's what gives you the dependence level. And it sort of encompasses the whole person rather than just the just about the substance itself. Yeah. You know, and so it's interesting because, you know, I think to myself, they get no points in the Fagerstrom if they smoke a half a pack or less. So if the substance is not tobacco, and let's say it's Norco, if they just take, if they use half as much, then it's no longer a demerit against them because it's a zero. And so I find it really difficult when, you know, if the pattern of use for a substance is in the middle of the night, according to the Fagerstrom, if it's not first thing in the morning, then it's lesser of a dependence. You know, and so, you know, I kind of struggle with that because there is a difference, but it can be very misleading, especially when that's the one that our agency goes off of for prescribing the type and the dosage of the NRT or the Chantix, or, you know, and so if they're coming out as a 2, low dependence, they may not even need anything at all, according to that. But yet, if the pattern is at a different time slot, but it's every night, just like that morning cigarette, you know, then it would show the same level of higher dependence.
Yeah. So this is Janice.
Hi, Janice.
From Bridgeport. So, you know, when we were talking about, you know, like what happens if I quit? Well, one of the things I found with my ex is that, you know, he wouldn't have any money to buy cigarettes. I would never give him money to buy cigarettes. I actually put him on an allowance. I would buy him like a carton a month, you know, and he would have to try to make that stretch. But the people in the community would know he had cigarettes. He was always so generous. But what he found is that when he ran out of cigarettes and tried to go bum off of them other people, nobody ever had any, you know, and I tried to tell him, they're only using you because they know you have cigarettes, you know, and he could not get that realization in his head. You know, everybody uses everybody, and that's the only reason they stayed friends with him. But as soon as he had nothing, they were gone. You know, they were never there to support, give him back a little some, and, you know, and it got kind of frustrating for me to watch this behavior. And it's like, you know, why do you do that? You know, they only want you for one thing, and it's a waste of time. You know, but it was hard for him to quit smoking until he actually got sick. You know, and it's really a difficult thing to watch, you know, but at least he respected me, and I told him no smoking in the house, no smoking around the kids, and he did pretty good with that. And but it's a rough thing when people are that addicted, you know, because it's that need, that craving that keeps them in it.
Sorry to interrupt you. Julie, do you know, were you able to connect with Ephraim?
No, he didn't text back.
Okay. I'm gonna give it a couple more minutes. If you guys want to take a really quick bathroom break, and then we'll be back in a couple of minutes. Hopefully we can get him back on. Hey Ephraim, I gave everybody like a minute, like a couple minutes to use the restroom, so you can pull all your stuff up and everything.
Sorry, I was muted. So I lost internet for a second. I'm on like a hotspot, but I might get booted off again. If I do, I'll just rejoin. While everyone's taking a break, I'm gonna unplug my like router, plug it back in. So I might disappear and try to get back on. I'm gonna try that real quick. Okay.
Okay, that's fine. I gave them like 5 minutes, so whatever you need is okay.
So we're on our triggers. So we need to identify the triggers so that we can strategically try to limit cravings when they're going to be the worst in order to have the best chance for a successful quit attempt via behavior change. So we've gone over trigger 1. So it's driving, maybe driving to work and maybe driving back home from work. But like us today, experiencing technical difficulties, we might just be staying home all the time. So maybe that trigger might not happen. So why don't, with one of you, whoever's back, if you're ready, if you're not, that's okay. Give us a second trigger. Here I put after lunch, just a popular one, but if anyone wants to throw us a different one, feel free to do that now. You can just unmute yourself.
I could put after you pick up kids from school.
After you pick up kids from school. Okay. Right. So now they've told you their other trigger, and after they pick up their kids, they really want to have that cigarette or that vape or that chew or whatever version that they're using. So you can just ask them the question, what will you change? Or what will you do? How will you change what you do in this situation? And they can tell you. So here, let's put what they can do. Does someone want to tell us an example of something they can do differently when they're picking up their kids from school and experience that craving? What can they do to do anything other than that craving or other than the cigarette?
Maybe they can go for a walk with their kids.
Fantastic. I like that one. Okay, and then I will change how I think in this situation by what can they try to think about so they don't think about the cravings, or what is a motivating thing that they can do? All right, let's call on someone. Let's go with Marjorie, if you're back.
We also have Devin, who says think about their kids' lungs and fresh air.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Devin. Think about kids' lungs. Good thing we aren't doing this training a few months ago when the air outside was awful. But yeah, so now we've seen the trigger, which is after picking up their kids, they want to have that cigarette. What are we going to have them do? So we're not telling them anything here. We're just asking them, so what can you do differently? And they're already motivated enough to get here. So they know what they can do, not what you're telling them. So they're saying,
Ephraim, I think if you can hear us, you froze again.
I can take a walk with my kid. We're going to go walk. Oh, am I frozen on my screen?
A little bit.
Okay. All right. So let's try to breeze through here before I lose connection. It's saying I'm unstable. Looks like it knows me well. Okay. Okay. I got some laughs from there. Good. Good.
I think if you turn your video off, it might help too.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do right now.
Okay.
Okay, you can still see my screen, correct? All right, I'm actually going to close this PDF also. I'm just going to stop editing it. I think that the PDF is taking up, with running the edit PDF and running the Zoom at the same time, it's taking too much, I don't know, brain power. So we're just going to say these out loud, and we'll remember them because so far we've got almost the whole thing filled out. So trigger 3, after coffee is what I wrote down. And so if this person doesn't have coffee, maybe they'll have a different one. I know you can have them get rid of their coffee entirely, but if this person is me, I'm not getting rid of coffee entirely. So what can they do? Do you guys want to come up with a new trigger, or should we just use this one? See some head nods. Okay, so coffee. After they have their coffee, whether it's their morning coffee or afternoon, what can they do differently? What can they change in this situation to do something different? Can we have someone give an example?
Well, if you put morning coffee instead of after coffee, because people get up in the morning and they have a cup of coffee and they smoke, because that's the two substances that their body is lacking from a daily basis when they first wake up in the morning. They're craving a little nicotine and a little caffeine. And I know that when I quit smoking, I went ahead and I will change what I do in this situation by, I would take my coffee outside and walk around instead of sitting and watching the news with a coffee and a cigarette, which is what I would do every morning. So I'd take my coffee outside so that I wasn't sitting in front of the ashtray and the,
That's awesome. Thank you. And thank you for sharing your own experience. I think that is a key factor here. So sometimes if it sounds like we're telling someone, oh, you should quit, knowing how hard it is or knowing that it's difficult, but at the very least they know, if you are a former smoker, that you've done it themselves and you understand how hard this ask is, or this like task is for people, especially during a time where they are stressed out. They'll be more receptive to talking to you. So like Stephanie did, she shared her story a little bit. So I do the same thing often. And it becomes more of a conversation than a like hesitation for a particular thing. So right now they driving their trigger, picking up their kids, and we'll say morning coffee, and we've already identified what they can do differently and how they can think differently in that situation. So let's move on because we lost a little bit of time. And so we're going to identify who are their people, what's their support system. They need to have a support system. And if they have nobody else, then you put yourself down here to say you are their support system. And also you are their follow-up system. You can be everything that they really need. And you can leverage your team wherever it is. If you're a nonprofit, you say, oh, like my coworkers right now are Melissa and Julie. If this person said, I have nobody in my life at all, I would say, well, no, you don't, because I'm here for you. You can follow up. My coworker, Melissa and Julie, would be happy to like talk to you if I'm not available or if I'm in a meeting. And then all of a sudden they've got 3 people. So I have heard that before. And that's one way to do it. In this particular person scenario, I just went ahead and put their wife. So turns out this guy was male, or maybe not, but he has a wife or she has a wife. Kids, this person has kids now, and whoever their dad is. So that is their support system. That's the people. Kids is a pretty good one because it just so happened that we wrote down their kids was a motivating factor for them, and they're going to go on a walk with their kids as opposed to have a cigarette and think about their kids' health. So that's a big support system for them. And maybe their kids are adult children, like they're 18, 19 in college, and they're like living at home. Maybe they or maybe even if they're little kids, you can leverage this too, right? And their wife and their dad. So this is their support system that you've put in place. So a lot of the times for these triggers, like if they're driving, they can call their support system, which is the wife or the dad or the kids, and be like, hey, I'm on my way to work. I'm having a craving. Just talk to me about something. And that'll last for about 10 minutes. And hopefully they don't have a slip. And then, well, what form of counseling assistance will you receive while quitting? So I want to plug in really quickly the native text line. If you're on our mailing list, I sent this out earlier last week, but it's a relatively new service, and it's kind of like the California Smokers Helpline, but you can text them and they understand the differences in the commercial and cultural tobacco, like I was showing in the beginning of the training in that video session. They can also use the California Smokers Helpline. For example, if they're like a truck driver, for example, might not be able to call you or to see you every 2 weeks because they're long haul drivers and they're gone for months at a time. Or maybe they get deployed if they're in the military, or if they're if they travel a lot for work, although that's not super frequent nowadays. But really, you can always put you, and I put that in capitals because if we're in this training figuring out how to do cessation counseling, then very likely it is you who is their counseling assistant. And you always put yourself as a follow-up, because with the 5A's model, their follow-up is a requirement. So whether that's following up with you or with somebody else, they have to follow up. Because again, it's 8 to 12 times before a successful quit attempt, in which case they're very likely going to need some help tweaking this plan a little bit. So what medications will you use for quitting, and how will you use them? Like I was mentioning earlier, I was going to give you guys a cheat sheet, and I didn't forget about that. But here we've already remembered their Fagerstrom test for nicotine dependence. They were at an 8. This person was at an 8. So you were already thinking he's going to need some form of NRT or some kind of assistance, because his dependence to nicotine is really strong. So they're probably not going to get in the car and not have that cigarette unless they have something to tone down and quiet the cravings just a little bit, and just enough for them to be able to think about their kids and get to work without having that cigarette. So you've already wrote down NRT patch and gum. And then you're going to write down for them, or you're going to tell them to write down how to use it. So you're going to apply the patch first thing in the morning, the strongest dose, which you will write on here for them, or you'll highlight for them, and the gum right before the triggers. And when are the triggers? Well, we've identified those. They're not at 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and 11 o'clock. They're whenever driving happens, after picking up the kids, whatever time that is, and after coffee. And you can do a couple minutes before that, because remember, it's going to take a few minutes. So you're not going to get in the car and then pop in your gum. You're probably going to say, I'm going to go to work. So right before I put on my shoes and head out, I'm going to start chewing my gum. And then I'm going to put on my shoes, and then I'm going to go find my keys, and then walk to my car, and then start driving. So by then it's been a few minutes, and the NRT is starting to kick in. So that's your schedule for your NRT. So how do I know that? Well, here's your cheat sheet. I've sent this out quite a bit of times. You can feel free to type in the chat if you want another one, or if you want us to send this out. This one is from the American Academy of Family Physicians, RX for Change. If you sign up to get their materials, they have one on there too. These are kind of all over the place. They just use the FDA has it too, because these are FDA approved medications for smoking cessation. So they have your gum here, lozenge, patch, nasal spray, oral inhaler, which is not as often, and then they have bupropion SR, which is a Zyban, and then varenicline, which is your Chantix. Zyban and Chantix is the brand name. These are the generic active ingredient. So these have the product name, the precautions to take, the contraindications. For example, if you're under 18, you can't just go buy NRT. You have to have a prescription at that point, which is, in my opinion, a little bit unfortunate, especially with the vaping epidemic that's going on. So if you have a youth person and they don't particularly want to tell their parents, they still need to go talk to a physician to get a prescription. They can't just say, man, I want to quit and I'm going to go get some NRT. They probably won't sell it to them. At least in California, some places are different. So, oh boy, it looks like I had these highlighted, but when I lost internet, it got rid of my edits, but that's okay. So if you guys look at here on dosing, I'm going to try to edit this really quickly and hopefully I don't get booted off. Edit. Nope. Okay. That's not going to work. So first cigarette, 30 minutes before or 30 minutes after waking up. So if you remember, like Stephanie's example, she said if she doesn't have that first, like at night before bed, she's not even gonna be able to go to sleep. So some people will wake up and they're like, good morning, everyone, time for a smoke. If that's the person, right, first thing in the morning, you're gonna give them the stronger milligram gum and patch, really. So 30 minutes before, that's kind of your window. And you know that because they've already answered the question in that Fagerstrom test for nicotine dependence. So they said they had, within 5 minutes of waking up, they have their cigarette. They answered yes to that and they got 3 points for it. So you're gonna have them put down that they're gonna take the 4 milligram gum on a scheduled basis, like a few minutes before their triggers, and they can have up to, this is might be a little bit hard to see, but the maximum pieces per day is 24 pieces per day. So they can't exceed that amount because then they're having way more nicotine than they should. So these are kind of estimates. They also have the chew and park method on here, but they're probably not going to read that. If anything, you would go on here and just highlight, here's what you're going to get at the store, 4 milligrams, and you're going to have them for your triggers, and you write that into their quit plan. And then you go over here to the patch. I hope you guys can see there's a little hand. Can you guys see that? Yeah, okay, cool. I'm sorry guys, I had this kind of bolded and highlighted for you, but I've lost that now. So this I still use the kind of the rule of thumb where if they wake up first thing in the morning and need their cigarette, because that lets me know that they're really dependent and that they need that titration, that amount of nicotine in their bodies. They really need to ramp that up in order to start feeling better or start getting rid of the withdrawal symptoms. But you can also do, if they don't have it first thing in the morning and they're not as dependent, you can use the 10 cigarettes per day, right? So if they have 10 cigarettes per day or less, then it's a certain dosage. And if it's 10 cigarettes per day or more, then it's a certain dosage. Our person was highly dependent, and so they also smoked, we did 21 to 30 cigarettes. So that person would get 21 milligrams on their transdermal patch. So they have the strongest NRT patch and the strongest gum to be used. They're put on the patch first thing in the morning, and they'll use the gum on the triggers right before the triggers happen. And this can be used up to 16 hours, I believe. Rotate patch application daily. Oops, where is it? Here it is. You may wear a patch for 16 hours. If patient experiences sleep disturbances, remove at bedtime. If you have like weird nightmares or really weird dreams, you can just tell them take it off at night and then put it on again first thing in the morning. If this is a person that needs to have their cigarette right before bed, then they might reverse that and put it on at night, sleep with it, leave it on in the morning, and then change it again at night. Maybe they'll get home and like settle in, take a shower, and then put on a new patch. And that might be that person's particular schedule for putting their patch on. So now you have your cheat sheet here. And you can use this for yourself, or you can just highlight it and give it to them. But either way, you're going to write down a much simpler form right here on their quit plan that you've already identified. And you can write in NRT patch, 24 milligrams, first thing in the morning, and gum a couple minutes before each identified trigger. And you can, I mean, if Walgreens is like their closest place to your nonprofit or to your clinic, you can just say, go there right now and buy this before you like go home and then throw this in the trash and then end up not doing it. So that is the kind of meat and potatoes of the QUIP plan and how to provide cessation counseling. There's a lot more that we can go into for very specific examples, but for now, those are really tangible tricks or tools that we can use. Oh, and for the money issue that we ran into earlier, so here they've got a price approximately, right? Like there's inflation and each state has different taxes and whatnot. So this is about $3 for a 9-piece set. There's about $1 per patch. And then if you get over here to the Zyban and Chantix, it's like $12 or $8. So if you compare these to the price of a carton of cigarettes, if they can't, or even a packet of cigarettes or a vape pen, if they're like trying to quit and they're like, well, I can't afford my cigarettes, what makes you think I'm going to afford an $11, prescription for Chantix per month or whatever it is that they're going on there for? So that's on there too, if in case you forget or you want to do the math with them. The last thing I want to kind of leave you guys with before I finish and we get into the Q&A is that it's really important to go over withdrawal symptoms with anyone that you're like really counseling. That's not really part of the QUIP plan, but from my experience, it's better to prepare them for the challenge that's about to come, because quitting smoking is not easy and they're going to experience withdrawal symptoms. Very few people experience no symptoms, but they differ. Some people get vastly different withdrawal symptoms than others. If anyone on here has already quit smoking and they want to share some kind of odd things that they experienced, feel free to do that. But this is from RX for Change. The California Smokers Helpline has one also, but like chest tightening, constipation, dry cough, depression, irritability, all these things are very likely going to happen. So if they experience fatigue and they're like, well, is that normal? One thing on the withdrawal symptoms that I really like to mention is that their cough might get worse. If this is a person that already experiences like smoker's cough, it might get worse before it gets better. And the reason for that is because the cilia in their throat and in their lungs is growing back. From all the years of smoking, they've destroyed a lot of it, but that will grow back. And the cilia are these little hair-like structures that it's also known as like the mucus elevator. And they basically get all that nasty stuff out of your throat and your lungs. And if you stop smoking, it's going to try to get rid of all that because they're like, hey, this isn't coming in anymore. Let's get it all out. And so you're going to start developing a cough for a little bit. And then once it's like most of it is all out, the cough will start getting better. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing this PDF screen and I'm going to go back to my presentation. So that was our practice session. And really, it's come to the part I just want to share with you guys. I did use the RX for Change as an example here, and they offer a free Train the Trainer course. This is a 6-hour course. You also get CEU credits for it. I don't know if they give you a certification, but it's a pretty good course. And it's from Purdue Pharma, their pharmacy like division of their school. That just so happens to be where it's housed. Purdue's under some scrutiny for opioids and whatnot, but that's another story for another day. Other people that are in the fight against tobacco, against commercial tobacco, there's some of our partners here, and I do want to say that the National Native Network is on here, as well as the California Rural Indian Health Board. And with that, I would be happy to take any questions or comments, concerns, stories, or anything else, and I'll have my contact information up here for a second.
I also want to include that we have a poll, so if you guys can hold off on leaving the webinar before taking a poll. And then we also have a question from Stephanie that is, what is the difference between the oral inhaler and an end?
An oral inhaler and like a electronic nicotine delivery system, if I'm understanding that correctly.
Yes,
Yeah.
because they have, you didn't go over the oral inhaler that they utilize, but isn't that like telling somebody it's okay to use an electronic nicotine device?
No, so if you go over, let me try to share again and we'll kind of go over it. Share screen, cessation handout, share. All right, so you guys should be seeing the FDA approved guide. So if you notice on here, ENDS or vaping is not on here. So that is not an approved FDA cessation device. Sometimes big tobacco will say this is FDA approved for the sale as a regular nicotine product, but they won't say that. They'll just say this is FDA approved and then not finish the sentence. So there are new devices, and I do offer some training, vaping specific trainings. But for example, there's IQOS, which they originally named as I Quit Ordinary Smoking because they can't name it. They can't say that it's a quit device or they'll get sued. So they just labeled it IQOS. And then in the like commercials or the advertisements, they'll just have the person that's talking about it say, hey, I quit ordinary smoking, and then they'll pop up the acronym IQOS, which is what they named it. And that is known as a heat not burn device, and they call it a heat stick, but it's literally the exact same thing as a cigarette that they stick into a little machine and they press a button and it heats it up and then you smoke it. So the only difference is that you don't light it with a cigarette. So the vaping also has PG or VG, which is an acronym for, propylene glycol, which is what kind of makes the so-called vapor. But it isn't water vapor at all. It's propylene glycol, and it has other heavy metals in it, as opposed to the, I didn't really get into it that much, but as opposed to the oral inhaler, all of these are, I guess, considered pure nicotine. If they're nicotine replacement therapy, they don't have anything other than nicotine. They don't have like nicotine and something else to make it more absorbent or whatever the case may be. They also, in vapes, they use the nicotine salt. They don't use a pure nicotine, which is when they combine it with propylene glycol, it absorbs into the lungs a lot easier and a lot faster. And so the addictive property of it is higher. So, and you're also getting a much higher dose. So with these e-liquids, in the UK, they have a regulation in which they can't be a certain amount of milligrams. If you notice, all of these, even the strongest patch is only 21 milligrams. And so that's like a cap in the UK. Here in the US, they don't have a cap. You can have as strong e-liquid as the manufacturer can make it, really. And so it might be way more nicotine than you were already doing when you're smoking. And so if that person identifies as a 2 or a 3 on the Fagerstrom scale, and they're saying, oh, well, I'm switching to vaping, they might be doing way more harm because they're becoming more dependent on it. So I went on a really hard rant there. I hope that answered the question, but vaping is a whole nother demon. So I tend to ramble on that subject.
Sorry.
I think,
go ahead.
I think that I really wasn't referring anything to vaping, but when I look at the nicotine oral inhaler, and I read that that 1 10 milligram cartridge it delivers 4 milligrams of nicotine and approximately 80 inhalations over 20 minutes, equivalent to 3 to 5 cigarettes. And isn't that oral inhaler just like if you would buy, an electronic that you pop the cartridge in?
No, so it's kind of like it's almost like a dry. There's a couple of different versions, but you're not really. You're basically just sucking through a porous substance that's coated in nicotine, and so you're kind of just breathing it in. And why they estimate it is because, again, like people you can use it for a lot longer, because it's not like it stops being an oral inhaler after you puff it for however much time it says. So like if you're puffing it for 10 minutes, you could just do it for 20 minutes, and then you're kind of using it to titrate you should use it just enough to not feel like a big withdrawal symptom. But again, it doesn't have any extra additive chemicals. It doesn't have propylene glycol. It doesn't have any. It's basically just air and nicotine, because it's not. It's like it's almost like a hollow pen filled with like a almost like a cotton soaked with nicotine that you're just kind of breathing in. I wish I had a picture of it. I probably should have brought it.
Yeah, you know, I've looked at pictures, and I'm gonna just say one more thing, is that when you look under how to use, I can't see yours because it's way too small print, but I have a medicated guideline that seems to be the same as yours, only I can't see your reading, but it says here, under how to use, inhale deeply into the back of the throat or puff in short breaths. So it's a little confusing that this would be something that you'd be able to get a prescription for in order to stop smoking, when it's really like buying over-the-counter electronic nicotine device.
Yeah.
So that's where I had some confusion.
Yeah, and these are used much less rarely. I honestly, in my experience, I haven't seen anyone use this product at all, especially because they are more difficult to get. Why would you, from a person's perspective, why would you like go to your doctor, pay for a visit, go to the like pharmacy, pick up some kind of inhaler, and then go home and start trying to quit when you're like, well, especially if you don't know the differences, they probably would be like, I'm just going to get a vape pen because according to a whole bunch of false information, it's safe to use. So
I mean, it's not on my list of what I would recommend either.
Yeah.
Nor would I recommend the nasal spray, because the nasal spray has the same effect as meth does after you use it. You know, it's hot, peppery feeling in the back of your nose or throat, nasal congestion, throat irritation, and it just, so for somebody who's, you know, had a substance abuse problem, it wouldn't be something I'd recommend either. But I guess that's just me.
Yeah. So again, those are two that are not used as often. For some people, like for example, I think truck drivers are one that's an example of people that do use the inhaler because they have that kind of hand to mouth experience. If you're driving all day and you're just like, well, I'm just gonna puff on my prescribed inhaler, because it's much more like an old school pipe type of smoking than a asthma inhaler. So thank you for your comments. Do we have any other questions?
So the only other question was from Micah, and it was whether you offer a training about vaping. I did answer yes, but if you could just give an update on the status of that training.
Yeah, so I do, and we can schedule one. The vaping kind of world is changing a lot right now, and there's a lot of developments. For example, when I made the presentation for that, the federal government was still only talking about creating some kind of national policy, and then they decided to basically ban Juul, and then Juul was like, ha, you're never banning us. They just rebranded themselves as disposable and then increased the nicotine in it, and now they're selling it more than they used to. So basically, yes, I do, and we can, and it's ever changing. So I might need to update it a little bit, or I can just kind of freelance, kind of like I did today with using what I've got and then kind of updating as we go. But it's a little bit different to do in terms of like a federal policy level, and they have also come up with a few new approved for the sale of tobacco, not approved for cessation, like new emerging devices, which are not considered vaping, but also in my presentation. For example, the IQOS is one, and they have like Marlboro heat sticks and a couple of other like up and coming devices that we should know about.
Ephraim, this is Margie. Two things. One, were you going to put all of your resources that you use or send them out to us?
All of the RX. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I interrupt?
No, that's
so all of the RX for change stuff, I can't really send that out because they have the end user agreement, but I would be happy to send the link, and then you just basically hit I accept, and then you can use all of their stuff,
okay.
so long as you're within their requirements. But I have a few of these, like the FDA approved medications. I have that I can send. That's not a problem. Some of the other stuff, I can send whatever I do have, or we can post it on our coalition page, on our resources page.
Okay, and the other thing, I listened to a webinar recently about different resources, and I didn't realize actually the California Smokers Helpline, or the 1-800 no-butts, actually didn't only just give information, but they will do the counseling. So they'll be for up to 6 months. They will follow people for call people back for so many days. They do motivational interviewing, and then up to once, I don't know, every month or something like that for up to 6 months. So if you don't have your own program in place, or people who are really trained or able to do it, you can still use that, do a hybrid kind of thing where you can use the California helpline to do some of the counseling and the follow-up. So I thought that was great.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's kind of their bread and butter. And they'll, so it's telephone counseling. They also have an app where you can do your quit plan on the app with them, like on the phone, and they have a text line you can set up to where they send you motivational text like every day when they know that you've identified the trigger in the app. You can also, if you're a clinic, you can set up your clinic to send an e-referral for the helpline to follow up with your patient, so that the patient doesn't have to make that like extra effort to make the call if they're already nervous. They'll just get a call and they'll be like, hey, Margie from Toyabe sent us a request that you were interested in quitting. Like, hey, do you want to chat, or do you have time to chat? And so you could set it up that way also. If you guys notice, the poll should be up. So if you want to answer those, that would be great. I'm going to not rate myself, so I'm just going to close it.
Sorry, I just posted it because we have some people saying that they're going to get off. So if you can just complete the poll really quickly before you leave us. And then Devin asked, what's the name of the Quitline app that you're referencing?
I think it's just called the California Smokers Helpline app, or their website is nobutts.org. So don't go to nobutts.com. That's something different. But nobutts.org is the website, and you can go on there and find out how to like download the app. But they have it for Android and iPhone. So you kind of, I would check the website first and see what that like actual key name is, because there's a bunch of different smoking cessation apps, but they won't be that exact one. I do recommend it. There's Freedom from Smoking too, but they charge money to download their app and have that resource. I also have there's a full 1 hour training that I did for smoking cessation resources. So there's like in person, there's group, there's self-paced, there's text, there's mobile app based. So that's like a full hour in itself training, and it's on our YouTube page if you want to check it out, and you can just fast forward through the parts that you don't need. It's on the Crib Acorns YouTube page. Any other questions? Okay, I guess I can look at the chat now. Nobutts.org. Cool. I'll hang around if you guys want. It's up to you guys. You can ask me pretty much any tobacco related questions if they're not necessarily about this training. We do have a native specific certification course that we're trying to get transitioned over to a virtual setting. I've been working on that with a few key partners. So we did have that request from our coalition members, and I have been working on it pretty diligently, but it's taken a little bit of doing. We're almost at that stage, so as soon as we get any updates, we will we'll send that. We'll probably mention it in our coalition meeting, and then we'll go from there.
And then just to add to some things, what I will do is I have everybody's contact information. So if there is a request for any materials that we are able to share, we can send those out. So please expect an email from me. So it'll be from mmeza@crib.org. If you're interested in also joining our coalition, I am the contact for the main coalition, and then you can also reach out to Ephraim and he will relay that to me. I don't think there's anything else, but like Ephraim said, if you have any questions, we'll stick around for another 12-ish minutes unless you want to get off. And then Ephraim, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just ordering material for our clinic and came across these, and somebody mentioned that Crib had made these a few years ago, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So we just ordered a whole ton of them, but we ordered them from U of A. And then we found out, are we able to order these from Crib? Or do you guys have any native material for outreach that we could order through Crib?
You can. We'd have to like print them. I know I have like maybe like 20 left in print mode. So I'd probably have to go in the office and print them out for you guys. But if U of A's already got them ready, they can use it too. They are giving us like credit. They're not like ripping off Crib or anything, but they've compiled a list of like publicly available resources, and they've put that into their native specific like cessation like certification, but they like attach like they use some stuff from our area, which is that flyer that you had, and then they had the it's like it's the tobacco use log, and then they have some from area in like New Mexico. So they've got a couple of different partners that but yeah, if I can send you what I have, and then maybe try to come up with more. But if they've got them ready printed, then you can order from them too. It's up to you.
Yeah, I can order them from them because they have them on nice cardstock, and they're not charging for them right now. So I was ordering other material, and they said, "Hey, we have these. If you're interested, we'll send them to you too."
Yeah.
So I don't know if anybody else needs these, but they were created for dental clinics. So they're the smokeless, how to quit smokeless tobacco. So that's helpful for us because we have a dental clinic that we'll be working with. But FYI, you can order them from U of A.
So I do want to add, we don't have our own depository of materials. Typically what we do is that if there's a request, we'll go ahead and order them and then send them to you free of cost. So if there is any time where you are, short on funds and you need those materials, we're able to just purchase them for you. We do have the funding for that. But we don't typically order a lot of stuff. So it's good to just let us know if you're going to need them in the next couple of months. Just give us a heads up, and then we can order them for you. Because like Ephraim said, we don't just have them on hand all the time. It just kind of depends, but yeah.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. And I think we're getting closer to working with our dental clinic, and they're really excited. So we've been looking for material for just handouts and flyers that are more specific toward dental. So that was healthy.
Awesome. That's really cool. I do have some materials right now. Like Melissa said, I don't typically stock like hundreds and hundreds of them, but we have some like vaping stuff that we use for trainings like this. Like if this was an in-person training, I'd probably have a bunch of handouts to give.
Yeah.
I probably would have given that specific dental one, but to edit like that particular PDF was a little bit more challenging. So I just used the RX for Change ones.
Well, thank you. It's helpful. That's what I was looking for. Helpful. Not
Yeah,
helpful.
I did talk to Jamali about the Ask Advisor for training, and we're collaborating on